everyone. Welcome to another episode of H2O. I am Kazaya.
And I am Titilayo. Good morning, good evening, good morning, and afternoon, depending on where you're connecting from.
How are you, Titi? How's everything? The last episode, we were in India. How have you been since then?
Yeah, thank you so much. I've been fine. Good to see you too, girl. I'm back home here in the United Kingdom, trying to enjoy the cold as much as possible.
Same here, and I'm actually connecting from the US in New York City to be precise. The host city, or the host country for the UN 2023 Water Conference.
That's true, and that is just some couple of weeks from now, right? I believe it's in March, in the New York, right?
Yeah, that's definitely right on both counts. Um, the UN 2023 Water Conference is going to be in New York, and it will be in March. So precisely next month.
Oh,
Are you ready?
March, yeah. You know what, girl? Do you know what comes to mind anytime I hear the word march? All I can think about is youth on the street protesting and trying to give power to their voices. Whenever I hear the word march, it just kind of remind me of how youth likes to go to the street and make sure that their voices are heard.
Wow, that is such a powerful vision, TT. Like, I do agree with you. When we think of youth, we think about their voices. But
Yeah.
another effective way is for their voices to be heard by the right people, especially the decision makers who can transform their demands into actions.
Actions? But how can they reach such high and powerful people? Because in the back home where I come from, these people are unreachable. They only listen to us when we are either on the street or we are being televised or we are maybe making one noise or the other. But how can we reach them?
TT, it's through dialogue. And I feel like the UN 2023 Water Conference presents this amazing opportunity. It is actually through collaboration and conversations that change happen. These two things are such a powerful tool for change.
Yeah, I get you because and I really know the dialogue is important. But the important question is how do we get to them? Because if I have something to say and I don't, how do I get to the right people who can actually transform my voice into actions and projects that are visible everywhere?
Those are actually pretty good questions, CT. Those are very, very important questions. But don't worry, I will let an expert do that. Our special guest today for this episode will shed more light on the value of bringing youth from the streets to the decision making tables.
Now I know you always have a haze up your sleeve. You're always prepared like Boy Scout. Okay. Um, can I know what this guest is, at least for all our audience right now that you're talking? If we are talking about bringing the youth from the street to the decision-making tables, I think this is something I am really, really interested in, and I know all our audience are also interested to meet who this special guest for today is.
So, TT, unfortunately, our initial guest, Mr. Hank Ovink, the special envoy for international water affairs of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, couldn't come due to an emergency meeting for the UN 2023 Water Conference. However, he sent an equally important person from their team. Our special guest for today is Miss Evita Rosenberg. With a background in global conflict and international relations, Evita Rosenberg is a policy advisor to the UN 2023 Water Conference at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands. Before that, she worked for IRC, an international NGO promoting resilient wash systems. She is a passionate advocate for water action and the human rights to safe drinking water and sanitation for all. Titi, help me welcome our special guest today, Miss Evita Rosenberg. Miss
Hi.
Evita,
Hello.
how are you? How are you today?
Hi, guys. So
Hi.
good to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So Miss Evita, maybe you can enlighten us on how busy the schedules are of everyone, the co-host, especially we now that we're just like a couple few weeks away from the UN 2023 Water Conference.
Yeah, so yeah, you're absolutely right. So we started our 60 days countdown. So things are
Oh, I think she hopped off. But anyways,
Maybe she's having
CT.
internet connections problem. Can you
But
hear me better? Can you hear me?
yeah. But speaking of schedules, how's your schedule like these days? As we also prepare for the water conference.
Oh, you don't want to know. I'm stressed to the highest point. Like I've never been this stressed all my life. Like I just applied for my visa online, and I have to be there on Tuesday. I don't know how
Well,
I'm going to do it. And I have to travel back to London for the interview. So, girl, I can imagine what people like Hank and the likes of people who are championing this conference are going through right now.
thank you for shedding light on that, TC. But Miss Evita is now here. Maybe Miss Evita.
Yes, here I am again. Apologies for that. So now what I was saying, it's a real pleasure to be here. And unfortunately, Mr. Henk Ovink couldn't join today, but he would have loved to join because he's very passionate about youth engagement in general, but also for the UN Water Conference. And in particular, there are all these stepping stone events on the road to the conference in March, less than 2 months from now. And one being the Latin American Regional Water Dialogue. So he just arrived back in New York after having visited Chile for the water dialogue. So I'm very honored to be here with you today instead. And yeah, that's it.
We are honored to have you as well. We are glad that you are here. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Okay, sure. I just want to make sure. We are honored to have you here, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us this morning or afternoon, depending on where you are right now. Thank you so much. And to ask the first questions, Keziah, can you do the honors, please?
Yeah, most definitely. So Miss Evita, you and your team, the Netherlands government, have played a pivotal role in supporting youth groups in the water sector, including Unify. How is it like working with youth for youth empowerment?
It has been very exciting so far to work with youth on the Young Water Conference. As you might know or notice, I qualify as youth myself. I'm myself under 30. So when I started working on the water conference, which was a bit more than a year ago, I was immediately quite passionate, felt passionate and intrigued by the engagement of different youth organizations on the road to the conference. For example, I was last June in Dushanbe in Tajikistan, where the 30 commitment was introduced to me. And I felt so inspired because we were sitting there at the Dushanbe conference surrounded by all these youth representatives. But I also looked at my own team and I realized a lot of my own colleagues are also under 30. And we are now truly influencing the future for the next generations. So it has been incredible. And also for the conference itself, and also much supported by Hank and anyone else, our ministers, one of the principles is inclusion for the conference next to action-oriented and cross-sectoral. And as part of inclusion, that very much means that we leave no one behind, that we include the voices of youth, but also indigenous and also women, because we cannot create a watershed moment, accelerate progress, change our water-related problems today without listening to those and including those.
Oh, thank you so much. One thing that actually caught my mind when you were speaking was the fact that you said leaving no one behind, and that is very, very important, especially when we talk about bridging the gap between the youth and the older generation. But how do you see young people organizing themselves, building synergies, and raising their voices globally? Because what is missing to achieve meaningful youth engagement? Because when you hear the word youth, we are energetic. And one way to actually make sure our voices are heard, that we know, is to scream on the street. How do you think we should build synergies and raise our voices globally so that we can make impactful and have impactful engagement with this older generation?
That's a really great question. And I think the both of you started talking about youth at the street, and I think it's so clearly now for the past couple of years now that youth voices need to be included in all these important decisions, whether it's about climate, but now also related to water, because most of climate crises have a relation, of course, to water. So that's one, through all the strong citizens movements that we see all over the world on the streets worldwide, but also back home in the Netherlands, where I'm from. I see it also through the establishment of very strong youth networks, because someone once told me, and I think it is so right, inclusion is often also about financing. It is having the means to be able to go to a conference like the climate conference last year in Egypt. It is also, thirdly, about youth being included in decision making and governance. And I think this conversation is particularly about that, and being able to reach out to those decision makers, to those politicians, but also to policy officers to share your opinions and thoughts. So on that, I think there are two things at the moment. Well, what I said, I'm under 30 myself, and I now have a decision making power on behalf of my government. They're allowing me to sit at these wonderful talk shows, of course, but first and foremost, also be very included in the process and organizing conference in itself. Secondly, in terms of youth representation, what I've seen is that more and more head of states, head of governments are inclined also to invite youth at the table, to give them a voice, but also the high level interventions. For example, last year, my Minister for International Trade and Development Cooperation, she invited a youth representative to do the joint statement at the COP27 together with her. And I truly hope we're going to see much more of that during the next General Assembly sessions, during the UN 2023 Water Conference, and so on. So those are the movements I'm seeing today.
Wow, thank you so much for explaining that, Miss Avita. I'm so happy to know that, and to hear these stories, that youth are given more opportunities to share their voices in decision making tables, which means that we are gaining momentum.
Yeah.
However, one of the genuine concerns as youth representatives, we have been developing the YDPA, the Water and Climate
Yeah.
Youth Development Plan agenda, in the past year, which is also in consultation with youth. But with regards to the monitoring and evaluation of commitments, it is
Yeah.
still a very blurred line. Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yes, absolutely. And this is a discussion that we're having at the moment as well. Well, first off, for all the listeners here today, the UN Water Conference, the outcome, of course, is as being part of the resolution, is a non-negotiated outcome document. So we, as the host of the conference, together with the Republic of Tajikistan and the Secretariat, said, this is not enough. This is the first time in almost 50 years that we're having a conference on water. The issues at the moment are too great. There's too much, too little, too dirty water, and we need to manage and fill water better. So that is the bottom line. We said we need action, action, action. But with a non-negotiated outcome document, that became a bit of an issue, of course. So for that reason, we established the Water Action Agenda, which is a platform of indeed those voluntary commitments. So on the positive note, I think it's really great, because that makes sure that people all over the world, whether it's institutions or individuals, feel inclined to join this movement, to join this roadmap, because it is relatively easy to join and come up with your commitments and to become aware of the issues that we're facing today. On the other hand, in terms of the monitoring and evaluation, we also don't want to create additional structures to the UN system that are already there, because the water has a home at a lot of different places at the UN. So for that reason, the Water Action Agenda is not an end in itself. We wanted to have a home in the existing structures, meaning that we're at the moment looking into to including the Water Action Agenda, the follow-up of the Action Agenda, and the monitoring in upcoming conferences like the HOPF, the Future of the Summit, and so on. But it is much work in progress.
Exactly. There is much work in the progress. And speaking about work here, when you speak about work, especially with the youth, it has to do a lot with engagement with stakeholders. So that takes me to the next question. What would be your key suggestions for young people when it comes to stakeholder engagement and building synergies with potential allies? What would be your key suggestion?
I think that's such a great question. And before working for the government, I worked for an NGO. So I did a lot of advocacy myself, reaching out to politicians, to decision makers, to ask them to include the human right to water and sanitation. So from that angle and from what I've seen so far, I would have a few takeaways. First is keep the question, the ask, and the message simple, and keep repeating that question and ask several times. But also make sure that it's not just addressing the issue, but mostly address the solutions that you have in mind, making sure that the decision maker is able to implement that. Because often, for example, I now am in a position of decision maker. If someone comes over and tells me about the need to include the human rights, sanitation, water more, I couldn't agree more, because I'm passionate about that, and I think everyone has a human rights, safe drinking water, sanitation. It's 2023, and we're running towards the end of the 2030 agenda, and this is terrible. This is not happening. But what I need is someone to tell me, but Miss Evita, did you think of this and this and this and this? And then I'm like, all right, this I'll bring to the table with my supervisors. So those are my first two takeaways. Keep it simple and constructive. And then my third is basically keep going the way you're going, because it is truly incredible how visible Unify has been. You're organizing these talk shows. I've met you guys in Dushanbe at Stockholm World Water Week. It's giving me goosebumps, because it's really, really impactful what you're doing. And hearing also other governments speaking about the importance of youth representation is truly fulfilling. So thank you so much for what you've been working on so far, and in the coming weeks to go, we'll collaborate much more.
Thank you so much, Miss. So to kind of wrap it up, you said to keep it simple and constructive, and just to keep going. And I am glad that our efforts, Titi, are getting momentum itself, because at the end of the day, youth are the pioneers of the future. And before we move on to our next section, we actually have a 30-second break, which is starting in a bit. But before then, we will see you.
Yeah, we will see you after the 30-second break. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you for joining us once again. I hope you can hear me, everyone. So welcome. Our guest in the house, we're going to be having, the next session is going to be what we call waterfall. It's time for waterfall. So it's a 60-second. Go ahead, Keziah.
Thank you, Titi. So basically, Miss Evita, waterfall is it's like a very, very informal, a fun section in H2O, where I actually ask our guests two choices, and you have to choose one of those, and you actually have 60 seconds to answer as much questions as you can. So without further ado, where's the countdown clock? Okay. Miss Evita, tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Glass half full or glass half empty?
Full.
Microsoft Teams or Zoom?
Microsoft Teams.
Beach or pool?
Beach.
Winning the lottery or landing in your dream job?
Oh, landing in my dream job. Which
Passion
I
or
am.
You're an inspiration.
Yours,
Or
Annie?
passion or stability?
Passion.
Pictures or selfies?
Pictures.
Pause time or rewind time?
Pastime. No, we're next.
Music or podcast?
Music.
Raise or bonus?
Race.
Oh, perfect. Well, that was 10
I come
questions.
from the
That's
nonprofit sector. I don't even know what a bonus is.
Titi, do you have anything? Do you have any follow-ups or any comments so far on the
No, yeah,
waterfall?
when she was answering the question, the one that I actually was interested in was the passion or stability, and she went for passion, and that is a sign that she's actually a youth. Because when it comes to you, we are all about the passion. Well, it may not make sense to us, but as long as we're passionate about it, we're going for it. So thank you so much for that 60-second segment, Keziah. And while we were live, we have a few questions from some of our audience, and this is the time where we ask the questions they want to know, and they want to hear from you directly about their question. So the first question this afternoon is from Kida. It says, hello, I am on the street, but muchly interested in water issues. How can he take part?
I think it's also a question for you guys, because becoming a member of Unify might be one start. Become member of a youth network to join voices, because joint voice is always stronger. Other than that, I think what we've seen so far in terms of the citizens movements, that a lot also happens on social media. Reach out to decision makers, reach out to politicians, or what I'm seeing much more also in the Netherlands, become a politician yourself. Sign up with a political party. If you truly want a voice to the table on important issues, politics is the way, or joining government like I did at the moment. Or becoming a member of the youth networks.
All right, thank you so much. Like she rightly said, joining an organization or a platform is the first important step, because united we stand, but divided we fall. There is little or much you can achieve when you're on your own, but when you come together and synergize with other people, there is greater power and greater audience. And thank you so much. And the next question is from me personally. All right, so I've heard about people working in the UN sector, working with governments and all. How does this influence your social life? As youth, we know that our social life is like one of the most important, especially when we don't really have much responsibilities like being married or having anything else to do. How do you balance your work and your social life? And I don't want the cliche work-life balance. I want the honest, how do you balance it?
Yeah, well, so it was funny because when you asked me about the passion or stability, I think getting to my 30s, the stability is fighting the passion every now and then. So that was a great, because I would love to have pets, a dog, a cat, I don't know, but I don't have time for that. No, so I must honestly say that in my leisure time and my time off, I love to spend the weekends with my family. I live pretty close to the beach, meet with as many friends as possible. But it is true that doing this particular work and standing up for or bringing those important voices to the table, working on climate and the water crisis that we're facing today, it is difficult to combine both, because there's only 24 hours in a day. But fortunately, I mean, you met also Mr. Henk Ovink before, and some of my other colleagues that you mentioned. I have such lovely colleagues that a lot of them became also my friends, fortunately.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for that. Kakizaya, do you have any questions?
Actually, I do have one, and it's coming from me also. So, Miss Evita, wow, what was your journey like? Being in this role, working on the UN 2023 Water Conference at such a young age. And perhaps that's something that our audience might be able to get inspiration from.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and sometimes I'm asking myself what happened over the past I think 10 years now, ever since I graduated from high school. Um, but in short, I have a background in international relations, and I got this really great opportunity when I was relatively young to become an intern at the permanent mission of the Netherlands in New York, working on UN peacekeeping. So eventually, I wrote a thesis, particularly also about that. And then I was hired for this international NGO on water and sanitation, which was such a great opportunity because they provided me so much space to self-develop. And I think that is truly important. I took many different courses, but also my leisure time, I joined a lot of debating platforms and like involved with youth platforms like you doing yourself. I was in the board of a youth network for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs myself about 8 years ago. And then I landed this particular job about a year ago. And honestly, at some point, I this was always my dream to do this particular work after I was an intern. But this field of work is so difficult to get a job in, as you all know. But I told myself, just keep going. Because if it's not, and this might be a very Dutch expression, but if it won't happen going to the left, then you try it through the right, and then you go on and go on and go on. So that's where I think that passion is incredibly important, to just keep pushing and trying to identify the right people to help you, because a lot of people want to help and they have guidance and advice on how to succeed in well, following your dreams basically.
Oh, thank you so much. Following your dreams. All right, we have another question from one of our audience, Maria. She says, what recommendations would you give to stakeholders that want to submit commitments related to the youth, but are still unsure about the process that they will follow after that?
So to submit commitments, that's a really good question, and that's an important one. So first off, there's the website to the UN 2023 Water Conference that we might be able to share with you in the notes of the show. On the website, there's a button, submit your commitments here. So that's very straightforward how you can submit your commitments. But I would always recommend, as you said so yourself, as united we get further, to join in coalitions for these particular commitments and to submit them. However, I've also seen very great examples of initiatives like a river cleanup or initiative by a school. So feel free to set up anything you like in your region, in your context. But do visit the website to upload your commitments, and preferably also before the 1st of March. This is not a deadline, but everything that we as co-hosts receive before the 1st of March will be able to somehow, for example, if they're really good initiatives, you might be able to give them some sort of spotlight during the conference and provide more attention. So that's good to know.
Oh, thank you so much. That is good to know. So you guys should get it from her. Go to the website and check everything. All right. So right now we're going to go on a 30-second ad break, just to give our guests and the time just a little of time to catch up, especially when passion and stability is trying to collide. We need to give us space to breathe. So we're going to see you guys back at the end of this 30-second break. See you.
Welcome back, everyone. TT, I must say that was such an amazing session, a great, enlightening, hopeful, inspiring session. Miss Evita, this is actually our last question. It's not more like a question, more so it's a reflection. What are three words that you can describe this session as, or any last three words that you would like our audience to take home with?
Oh, first, you said it yourself just now. I think hope. And second, our future. And third, action.
Hmm. Did you hear that? Hope. That's something that actually we need to hang up to. Hope. And she said something about actions, the future. So we have hope, we have the future, and we have action. So guys, these three words represent the youth, and this is all we need, and this is what we have. So let us empower ourselves and make sure that our actions flow for tomorrow. With that, I would like to thank all our special partners. But before I start thanking the partners, I would like to specially thank all the NFPs, that's the National Focal Points of Unify, that have been attending and have been with us from the beginning of this episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We are here because of you and making us feel part of the team. We like that you're part of the family. Also, we like to thank our partner, International Water Association and the Younger Water and Climate Working Group. We especially want to thank our special guest today, who has not only answered our questions, but she has answered all our questions in a youthful way, in a language that we understand and we can remember. For that, we say thank you. Also, we'd like to thank our audience, all our audience from all over the world. I can see from Burkina Faso, from Uganda, from Nigeria, from Guinea, from all over. I can see from Iraq. Oh, guys, thank you so much for being here. We are here to make sure that our voices are heard. Thank you so much. Kizaya, do you want to tell us about the next episode or anything I left behind?
TT, that's an amazing question for me, but unfortunately, the next episode will be a very huge surprise, which we will be publishing in the upcoming days in our social media. So, without further ado, I would like to informally, because of course I know we will see each other at the UN Water Conference, and hopefully, Miss
Yeah.
Evita, we could also take a picture and catch up by then. But till then, it is goodbye. Actually, not goodbye, but see you soon. Thank you
See
so
you
much
soon.
for tuning in.
Thank you so much,
Bye.
everyone. It was really great. See you in March with
Bye.
commitments and action.
Sure.
It's time to change the tide of fate, set our hearts on fire, and we will never stop until we break.